You're listening to Wild Things and Wild Places, a Muley Fanatic Foundation podcast that aims to discuss issues and efforts related to the Muley Fanatic Foundation mission, the conservation of mule deer, furthering the sport of hunting, and sound wildlife management.
Everybody knows I'm a Muley fanatic.
It's time for Wild Things and Wild Places. And here's your guide, Joshua Corsi.
And welcome to Wild Things and Wild Places. Joining me today from Sporting Lead Free, their program director, Hannah Leonard. Hello, Hannah.
Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you for carving out some time to visit with me. It's always a pleasure to be able to visit with someone, especially after the new year, and get that momentum, if you will, of someone else's vibe. And you've always had a strong vibe of positivity and just encouragement in past efforts that we've been able to collaborate on. I'm assuming everything is wide open with a brand new calendar year ahead of you, and you have nothing to do. Is that fair?
Oh man, wouldn't that be nice? We are fortunately hitting the ground sprinting into 2024. So we have a full calendar of different events we're going to be having tables at and presenting at. And so I'm staring at a wall full of sticky notes here, making sure I have all my ducks in a row for these upcoming events.
I would expect nothing less. I really anticipated that you were going to be like, seriously? Did you say I do nothing? No, I'm not saying that. I know how busy it is, and particularly these not only first quarter, but second quarter throughout the whole year. It really, with the efforts at Sporting Lead Free, you guys have grown significantly since your inception. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we started back in 2020 is when the wheels started turning with our founder, Brian Bedrosian. And actually, I should say even before then, Brian by day is a raptor biologist. So he has been aware of the issues of lead in wildlife for almost 20 years now. I really shouldn't say that we started back in 2020 because it's been his brainchild for a while. But Sporting Lead Free officially started back getting things underway there. And I started almost 3 years ago now. So I've been with Sporting Lead Free, starting as the outreach coordinator, now into program director. And we have grown substantially. We've got, a large membership base. I think we're around 500 members now, and ambassadors and conservation partners like the Muley Fanatic Foundation. We're so thankful to have you guys on board in that program, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where we can take Sporting Lead Free the next 3, 5, 10 years.
And I'd like to maybe rewind the clock a little bit and talk about our engagement, our involvement, and our support of Sporting Lead Free. You and Brian came down to Green River, the office, the four of us, you two, we went to the range. And really the impetus to that activity was a conversation about, we just want to show you. We're not trying to sell anything. We're not trying to push a mandate. We're not seeking legislative action or a potential sponsor of a bill in the future. This is just about education and let you draw your own conclusion. But we have some shooting demonstrations at the range that if you guys would be interested in participating in. And of course, we're like, this group wants to come and shoot at the range. And yeah, we can do that. It was really a simple ask. But the proof of the pudding was in that experience of being able to compare side by side shooting lead ammo and shooting copper ammo, that there is a significant difference and that one should be mindful of the potential after effects of your time in the field when harvesting an animal. I can tell you it was a profound experience for us. Again, there was no mandate there. You hear a lot of things about lead-free ammo and lead-free initiatives and even lead-free legislation and mandates that are coming from other states. I'll just leave it at that. But that's not the approach of Sporting Lead Free. And I admire that. I value that. And I think it's a platform that we are fully behind. And I just applaud the efforts and I applaud the way about those efforts. I think they're profound. And I know they've had an impact on us. And given the opportunity in a sporting goods store to be able to purchase ammo, that pause for that extra moment to look for copper ammo, it's enormous. And there's a lot of reason behind that. So let's talk about that. You're the expert on this. I just wanted to share our experience because it did have that type of impact that continues to resonate today and moving forward. So let's talk about the idea behind it and the problem that was identified and how there's a solution out there.
Brian Bedrosian, our founder, he was doing raptor and raven studies in graduate school. And around that same time, California was running all sorts of studies on the California condors and how they were getting impacted by lead from spent ammunition in gut piles left by hunters. And he said, hey, I wonder if this same or similar thing is happening in Wyoming to our raven and eagle populations. So he ran these experiments where he captured a whole bunch of eagles and ravens, took their blood and tested it for lead. And lo and behold, during the hunting season, these raptors and corvids, the ravens, they had blood lead levels. So the following years, he actually supplied lead-free ammunition to hunters on the elk refuge outside of Jackson Hole and was able to see almost a 1-to-1 ratio of hunters who were successful with lead-free bullets. And for big game hunting, that's a copper bullet, and a drop in blood lead levels in these avian scavengers. So for him, that was this kind of light bulb moment of, holy moly, we as hunters, we can make a difference by just switching what we're shooting out of our firearms. So at the time, he published his data, as scientists do, and wiped his hands and was like, all right, on to the next project. And we're still having these conversations about the effects of lead ammunition after our target species is taken. So that was the genesis of sporting lead free. Is Brian was like, hey, I am a scientist and this is a marketing and outreach issue, an education issue. We need to educate hunters and anglers on these effects and do it in a way that is non-political, non-legislative, non-regulatory. We know as hunters, as anglers, we know what we want to do, and we want to do the right thing in order to preserve our heritage going forward. And in our case, that's making the choice to go lead-free when we're in the field, whether we're hunting or fishing. So that's how Sporting Lead-Free started. And as you mentioned, we are fully educational initiative. You'll never see us going for legislation pro or against lead. We always say we're not anti-lead, we're just pro-lead-free. We really believe in that, and knowing that if people are educated about this, that they'll make that decision.
That's incredible, Hannah. It's a great story. It really sets the table for how Sporting Lead Free operates in their efforts to further educate and bring awareness to the forefront of a hunter's decision. Let's talk specifically about some of the results and some of the findings, because I think that's really where someone can understand that this impact is measurable and you can quantify it pretty quickly. You do a battery of tests that have been able to showcase this. We've been the guinea pig, if you will, on some of these tests, so we could see it firsthand. But you've done several of these now all over and involved several people. I'm assuming that the reaction is very similar to ours. Is it not?
It is. I guess I should explain that the test you're referring to is when we do a shooting demonstration. As hunters, when we go, and I'll specifically talk about hunting for a minute. So when we go to the range to sight in our rifle, to get used to our new rifle trigger, getting everything together, practicing, we're usually just shooting paper. So when you shoot paper, there's a hole in the paper and you go on with your day. You don't really think about what that bullet looks like afterwards. Maybe you harvest an animal and sometimes you might find, a big chunk of that bullet, or maybe as you're processing, you'll find a little fragment here and there. What we don't really see is how many fragments there are that come from our bullets, whether they're your classic cup and core bullet or your more advanced bonded bullet. If it has lead and it's not a fully monolithic copper bullet or a copper alloy bullet, you're going to have lead fragmentations. In these shooting demonstrations, we do a couple things. The first is we shoot into these big shooting barrels, and we shoot them into this. We have a cradle that holds water jugs or a bag of water, and we shoot a bullet into that water, and then we drain out that water, and you can see all of those hundreds of thousands of lead fragments that are left in that chunk of water. And that kind of gives you an example of maybe what would be in an animal that you're taking out in the field. Additionally, we also shoot ballistics gels, which are super fun to shoot just in and of themselves, but it's great to see that side-by-side comparison of that wound channel between a lead bullet and a copper bullet and also see that fragmentation. When I'm talking about fragmentation, as soon as that lead bullet hits its target, it begins to fragment into these tiny little pieces. Some of them are as small as a piece of dust and really hard to see. Others are quite large. And it's actually those tiny dust particles that are extremely dangerous for our avian scavengers. And then also, we don't want that in the meat we eat at home. So we've done countless shooting demos, and they always result in people being like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And, oh, it makes sense now. Like when I was processing my meat, I saw these fragments. I didn't think much of it. Or people will say, oh, well, I was really careful and I processed around the wound channel, but I'm still finding fragments. And that's because those lead fragments, they can travel up to 18 inches from that initial point of impact. The only surefire way to make sure you're not leaving any lead in the field or bringing any lead home is to use a lead-free bullet, which the industry standard is copper. There is a tin bullet out there too, but copper is definitely our favorite.
When you talk about copper bullets, obviously Barnes comes to mind for me. That just seems to be a name that resonates with me and my time in the store when I'm seeking out that ammo. They're exclusively copper bullets?
They are, yep. All of Barnes bullets, which their factory is over in Utah, all of theirs are a copper bullet. And they were the original copper bullet on the market back in the 80s. They're the tried and true name out there that most people are familiar with. One thing that we do talk about, unfortunately, in the state of California, they did mandate that you can only use lead-free ammunition in big game hunting. And because of that, the one benefit of that, I should say, there's a lot of not beneficial things that came from that, but the one great thing that came from that is all of the major ammunition manufacturers had to come out with a copper bullet in order to sell to the market in California. So a lot of manufacturers loaded Barnes bullets, but then because of that legislation, they began manufacturing their own line of copper bullets. So now you have Hornady with the CX bullet. Nosler has the E-tip. I know I'm going to forget a million. There's so many different manufacturers out there. Winchester has the copper impact. So most all major ammunition manufacturers have a copper bullet. It's just a matter of knowing what that is. And just like you said earlier, when you go into these sporting goods stores and you look on the shelf, most people just see, oh, that's the caliber I'm shooting. They grab it and they go. Your average hunter, at least in my experience, I ask the average hunter and I say, hey, what are you shooting? And they'll tell me the caliber, but they won't know the specific bullet. So our big thing is just educating people on that, because it isn't easy to decipher when you go to the store and you see all these options, what is copper and what isn't. That's part of our education, is making that choice really easy for folks so you don't have that choice paralyzed moment in the store.
I would think, Hannah, that we're seeing more and more manufacturers produce this because of maybe consequences of legislation or mandates that have come out of states like California. But those manufacturers, has there been conversations with Sporting Lead Free as an organization and the efforts that you promote with those maybe individual manufacturers, maybe not as a whole, but is it really becoming a mainstay of their business, and or maybe a forecast for future business?
It's definitely, the manufacturers that produce both lead and copper. We have had conversations, and they are seeing the market really start to move towards more demand in a lead-free ammunition way forward, which is awesome. The one thing that a lot of people don't realize is the majority of ammunition manufacturing is not for hunting. And so those manufacturers, they don't want to alienate maybe their home defense line or folks who are really into target shooting, because like I said earlier, we're not anti-lead. When I go to the shooting range, I still shoot lead. It tends to be more inexpensive than copper. So if I'm trying to get used to a rifle or just practice shooting positions, I'll shoot lead. But as soon as I go out in the field, that's when I switch to copper. So again, we see where lead currently has a place still out there, and we don't want to alienate those manufacturers who are still producing lead. There's just a time and a place. But certainly we're seeing a movement where more and more manufacturers are going towards a lead-free bullet. And you'll even see there's a lot of these smaller shops that are primarily just shooting or manufacturing for reloaders. They're actually producing a solid copper bullet, and that is for performance reasons. So seeing people, yes, they care about the beyond impacts of their bullet, but they also want something that's performing really well. And they're choosing copper for that reason is really cool. So you see companies like Hammer Bullets, Cutting Edge Bullets, Lehigh Defense. These are all kind of your smaller mom and pop-esque shops that are turning out these copper bullets, and they're crushing it.
Hannah, on that note, have you had folks that you have engaged in these conversations that talk about a performance difference between copper and lead?
Yeah, so from a performance standpoint, we talk about a couple different things. So the first thing is from an ethical shooting range. So let's say sub 500, 600 yards, copper and lead bullets are going to perform pretty similarly. The one thing to note with copper bullets, because copper as a metal is less dense than lead, in order to get the same grain weight, they had to make the bullet a little longer. Now, if you're a ballistics nut, you might be like, what? I don't want a longer bullet going down my barrel. That's going to cause all sorts of issues. The neat thing with copper is because it retains 95 to 99% of its weight, you can actually get away with dropping down in grain weight. And so you get that similar performance out of your barrel as you would your lead counterpart that's maybe a heavier grain weight. So you can have a lighter, faster, flatter bullet with copper than you could with lead. So there's a little bit of nuance between those two. The reason I pointed out in the beginning of this answer was the ethical shooting ranges is because I know long range shooting is becoming more and more popular as our optics improve, as our technology in firearms improves. And prior to a couple years ago, long range bullets for copper for hunting were not great. They wouldn't expand reliably past 600 yards. So that's a caveat I always say. However, just like our cell phones, technology improves all the time. And our cell phones were terrible in the 80s, as were some copper ammunition. It was not great. But as we improve technology, things get better. So now there's manufacturers who are producing a pretty great long-range copper bullet. So Barnes has their LRX bullet. McGuire Ballistics out of California, he's doing some awesome stuff with copper bullets in California. And there's always going to be nuance. And I just want to make sure everyone understands that. If you go and buy a box of copper and you shoot it out of your rifle and you say it's totally crap, it might be because your barrel doesn't like that particular bullet. Just like any gun and any ammo, each gun prefers a certain kind of ammo, just like our feet prefer a certain shoe. Making sure that you're finding out what the best combination is for what tools you have.
Yeah, that was a good explanation there. I think that would resonate with a lot of folks. I'm glad you mentioned that there seems to be a lot more coming onto the market for those that reload or hand load themselves. That seems to be, particularly with COVID, it seems, or post-COVID, this time that created for folks to really dial in that skill set, but then also recognizing that there were some distribution challenges and that folks were not being able to find success when they went to the store to be able to find what they were looking for. They were able to develop and hone this skill set and have that intimate relationship with their firearm and their tool of trade to be able to really master that to a very precision level based. And knowing that the copper bullets are part of that process, I think that's good. I think that we're heading in the right direction, are we not?
We are, and it's awesome that you mentioned that too. I'm not a reloader myself. I already have too many other expensive hobbies, but
True
those
that.
folks that I right, I know, as I'm looking at my fly tying desk behind me. But I've spoken with a lot of reloaders, and they actually really love working with copper because most copper bullets are hand lathed, which means the accuracy of them is top notch. They're on these CNC machines where it's all super controlled environment. So they know that when they're loading that bullet and that certain powder and that pressure, that they're going to have so much more consistency versus if they're loading with a cup and core or even a bonded bullet, which is awesome to see that kind of performance aspect come out of a lead-free bullet. So that, and I should also mention, since this is a Wyoming-based organization and you're in Wyoming, that the record for the longest distance shot was actually made with a copper bullet, which is awesome. I think
Tell me about
the
that.
mileage. You probably know it. Guys over at, I think, Nomad Riflemen, they are the ones that set that record. And again, it wasn't necessarily with a hunting bullet, but copper is made for accuracy. And so that's what they developed for this world record shot, which is super cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, no, I'm glad you got to that. I'm curious, what about copper jacketed bullets?
Yeah, so we also get that a lot of times. People will say, oh, yeah, no, I am shooting copper. And we're like, oh, great. What bullet is it? And they'll tell me what bullet it is. I'll say, oh, man, that's great. But that's a copper jacketed bullet. So when we're talking about copper jacketed bullets, there's two different kinds of bullet construction. There's a cup and core and then your bonded bullet. And a cup and core is exactly what it sounds like. You've got a cup of copper, your copper jacket, and you pour in the lead into that. Those are typically more inexpensive bullets. And then you have your bonded bullet, which is a very similar construction where you've got your copper jacket again, and then inside is lead, but they molecularly bond the lead to the copper jacket. So it stays together quite a bit better than a cup and core bullet. You do still get a lot of fragmentation out of those bonded bullets. You'll see in any ballistic magazine or any reviews that, your weight retention, it's good. It's probably, I think, like 60 to 75% in these bonded bullets. But with copper, you're getting a 95 to 99% weight retention. So again, ballistically speaking, copper kind of takes the cake there on weight retention.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next. I was going to ask on the results of that. Despite being copper jacketed, there is still a tremendous amount of fragmentation that occurs.
Yep. Yeah. So even with copper jacketed, which is standard unless you're loading, most every single center fire bullet has a copper jacket around it. And again, that's to keep that lead together because lead is so soft, and keeping it together increases your weight retention, which increases your bullet performance. Even though those bonded bullets stay together better than cup and core bullets, they still do fragment. I think on average losing around 30 to 40% of their mass in fragmentation. And that's what ends up in our gut piles, and that's what can end up in the meat we bring home.
Yeah, perfect segue. You've set the table for me, and in this next line of questions, I wanted to inquire with you about why I have you. It's one thing that this has a tremendous documented scientific effect on our avian population, eagles, ravens, etc., and our scavengers and those that roam within that predator classification. But when you talk about game meat and bringing it home, what kind of tests and documentation through science is out there to really showcase the potential harm and hazard for you in consumption of lead? Where is Sporting Lead Free at in that type of data?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked about this. And I also wanted to lead up front in saying I am not a doctor. I have my master's and it ends there. I have an MS, not an MD.
I was going to say that's because when you went to college, you still wanted to have fun, right?
Exactly.
I'm in the same camp.
Yeah, right. There was one time in my life I thought I wanted to be an anesthesiologist, and now here I am teaching people about shooting and fishing. So
hey, I think you did well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm having a ton of fun. Anyway, but I just want to have that caveat. This isn't necessarily medical advice. It's just information for folks. But we know in general that lead is not something great for us as humans to consume. We took it out of paint. We took it out of gasoline. We're trying to get it out of water pipes. So we know consuming lead can have detrimental effects to our development and just our being. There's tons and tons of studies out there about lead exposure. There are few studies about lead exposure from game meat. A lot of those were done with cultures that are subsistence hunters, so First Nations peoples up in Canada. There's been some studies along with that. But I want to have this caveat out there of when we're seeing lead fragments in game meat, there have been studies done throughout the United States where they've tested game meat that's been brought into a processor, and then they x-ray it and they count lead fragments. The amount of lead that's in those packages of meat, it's likely not going to send you and me as adults to the hospital, but it's something we certainly want to be aware of if we have kiddos at home, especially kiddos under 6 and a pregnant partner. And that is because lead is a neurotoxin. It's going to affect our development. And so if that's something we can be aware of and knowledgeable of and avoid, that's great. but I don't want to freak anyone out. It's not one of these things that we're trying to fear factor folks. We're just trying to bring awareness to this issue. For example, in Teton County, Wyoming, we actually scan all of the donated game meat that comes in through the Hunters for the Hungry program through Wyoming Wildlife Federation, and then also just local hunters donating meat. And the past 3 years, we've now x-rayed over 6,000 pounds of game meat, which is awesome. All of that gets distributed to the community. Within that, the amount of leaded game meat that we find, the ground meat, it's about 19% of ground meat of that 6,000 pounds has a lead fragment in it. You go through steaks, roasts, and other, and that's going to be, your ghee and snack sticks, that sort of thing. Those percentages drop pretty substantially, around 2%. For steaks and roasts, and 4% for your jerky and snack sticks. And a lot of that is just because what we're turning into a burger is usually what's close to that wound channel. We cut out that bloodshot meat, and then we throw all that other stuff into the burger pile to be ground. So it's something that is present in our game meat if we're using a lead bullet. But again, I don't want to freak anyone out about it, but know that there are studies out there where they're quantifying how many game meat packages have lead fragments in them. There's studies about how lead impacts humans in general. Know that there will never, ever be a study where we're actually feeding kiddos game meat that has lead fragments in it. I get a lot of people telling me like, oh, there's no study that directly correlates consuming leaded game meat with developmental issues in kids. And I'm like, well, I really hope there never is, because to do that study would be horrible. So just know that, again, we're just out here to provide that information for folks and resources if you want to learn more.
Well, and I think you hit it, Hannah. I think that's the approach of sporting lead free that I have become so fond of. It's the approach. It's just giving the information. What you choose to do with the information, that's up to you. But we're going to provide the information for you to make the best decision possible for the health of not only your own consumption, but what you leave behind on the landscape, and knowing that there is an ecosystem that relies on responsible stewardship, and that this is an opportunity for you to play a part in that. And when you ask individual folks, what are you doing for conservation? This is one step, a very small step, that you can wear as a badge of honor, knowing that I willfully made this choice based off the research, the information, and the data available. And I come to this sound decision with confidence, knowing I'm doing the right thing. And to me, that is hands down the best thing about sporting lead free. Is that's the role that you play within this process, is providing solid, sound information for a decision to be made that has a good outcome. So again, carry on and move forward with good work, because you're doing it. The leadership of Brian and the team that you have assembled is a great and solid resource, and truly it's a great ambassador to the hunting community, and I applaud you for that. So again, my hat's off. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you hit the nail on the head too there with hunters. We always want to say we're the conservationists out there. So making the switch to lead-free, you're knowing what is going on beyond your bullet, what you're leaving behind in the field, what you're bringing home is truly the best meat out there and the best resource out there for scavengers. And also knowing that this is going to hopefully help our hunting heritage by making this voluntary switch, because as we know, hunting tends to be under attack pretty frequently. And so knowing that we can take one more talking point away from the anti-hunting folks out there and saying, no, we know about this, we're making this voluntary switch, we want to keep our hunting heritage going for generations to come. This is really what we see that ultimate benefit in that.
Yeah, nobody likes mandates. Let's just be real.
Nope.
We live in the land of the free that came at a high sacrifice by many for us to be able to live in this truly blessed nation that the planet has never seen, in my view. But to be able to do this voluntarily and to be able to make sound decisions like this, that's really the counter to being able to live in places where they do mandates. Is we don't need someone to tell us how to do the right thing. Let us just do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're here to help you do that.
Yeah. So what's on the docket for 24?
Oh my goodness. We have so much on the docket. We'll be at all sorts of trade shows. So if you are anywhere in the United States, we might be seeing you around. We'll be in Sioux Falls for the Midwest Fish Wildlife Conference. We'll be down at the Hunt Expo down in Salt Lake City. Pheasant Fest, if anyone's going to be there. It's Sioux Falls, South Dakota again. If you're more local, we're going to be in Cheyenne at the Laramie County Sportsman's Expo, the Mile High Expo in Denver, and of course, I can't fail to mention, we'll be down at Mule Deer Days in Rock Springs with you folks again. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I need to get this button I have on this soundboard that is like one of those 90s sitcom applause buttons. When you said Mule Deer Days, I so wanted to hit that and just make this huge round of applause, kazoos in the background. Yeah. Yes, I'm very grateful that you guys have carved out that to be part of your calendar and activities for Mule Deer Days. I think it'll be a wonderful event. We've implemented a lot of changes. It was the inaugural run last year, and there was a steep learning curve, and I think we've learned a lot, and we're excited for Mule Deer Days too. And we're excited that Sporting Lead Free will continue to be a part of that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to be a part of it.
All right, Hannah, it was great to talk to you about this. Anything we didn't cover that you want to throw out there?
Just if anyone has any questions or they want to learn more, find our website. We're sportingleadfree.org. We're also pretty active on social media, so give us a follow there. And we'd love to meet everybody, and hopefully we can get this message continuing to go out there in 2024.
Hannah Leonard, the program director for Sporting Lead Free. Please share this information and content with others. Again, it's not a requirement. It's just an ask, and that would be the charge that I would try to implore upon you, is that you share this information and let folks draw their own conclusions. Let them have their own questions, and let their questions be something that maybe they follow up with and visit with Hannah or Brian and the team at Sporting Lead Free, and to be able to further discuss and create dialogue around these questions or content. And let's do the best we can to be the best versions of ourselves and what we represent. Hannah, thank you again. Until then, happy trails.
Gathered around the campfire's flickering glow, stories ignited, bridging hearts and minds as the world outside faded and connection reigned supreme. Welcome to Campfire Chats.
Welcome to Campfire Chat. I'm Josh Coursey, your guide on this episode of Campfire Chat. And joining me today, I got Saul Griffith from the Sporting Lead Free community. He's the Wyoming Outreach Coordinator. Saul, welcome.
Thanks for having me here.
Have visited with Hannah about the Sporting Lead Free initiatives and the efforts there. You're fairly new to that part of the team. Before we talk hunting, maybe just a brief background of what you're doing, where you're from. And
yeah, I guess you can say I'm an interesting story on that. As a very avid hunter now, I definitely, like a lot of people in Wyoming, they grew up hunting with their families and everything. I didn't really have that. I came from a non-hunting family, but we were a very poor family, so we were always getting game meat donated to us. And I don't know, I've always had this drive to be a hunter, so I always, when everybody else was like donating game meat to us, and I was like a small kid, I was always wanting to know why aren't I out there gathering the meat instead of relying on other people to donate it to us. So that was where I first really started getting into hunting. Started hunting all by myself when I was about 14 was when I first started actually hunting, because my parents didn't want to take me and they weren't going to let me go by myself till I was 14. So I started hunting when I was 14, and now it's pretty much dominates most of my life.
yeah, you're Wyoming native, Saul?
Yes, born and raised for the most part.
In Southwest Wyoming, or?
No, actually, I was born in Jackson Hole because at the time my family lived in Daniel Junction.
Okay.
So that was the nearest hospital. So I was actually born in Jackson, and then I grew up in Encampment, Wyoming. We moved there when I was 6 years old, and then that's where I graduated high school and all that. So I lived in Encampment clear up till I joined the Army.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your service. Yeah, appreciate that. Encampment in that Saratoga area, a tremendous landscape, a tremendous backyard, if you will, for someone who wants to take up hunting. I think you lucked out there.
Oh, absolutely. I can't even imagine growing up in a better spot for somebody with what I enjoy doing, everything outdoors. I remember being a kid and being able to ride my snow machine from town, outside of town, so that I could go coyote hunting and all that. So it's cool when you live in a community that's that small.
Yeah.
And Camet doesn't even have any paved roads. The only road that's paved there is the highway that goes through it. Everything else is still dirt roads.
There's something to be said for that, though, but something to be also cherished.
I love it. I loved it so much.
I can tell you when they took down the one flashing stoplight in Kimmer at the Triangle, I was excited. I live outside of Kimmer, but to drive through there and know that there's not even a stoplight in that town anymore, that's a badge of honor in my mind.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's talk hunting. Hunting, obviously, it sounds like the sustainability and the yield that you gain from game meat to complement your dietary needs and just your staple as a food source. High priority in your upbringing and high priority now as a man.
Absolutely. I don't buy meat at all, ever. I got 2 kids as well. All we eat is game meat. And honestly, I prefer it to just about everything. So,
okay. Particular favorite?
Honestly, like, this might give me some weird looks from some of your listeners, but as far as just Wyoming, North American game animals, pronghorn.
Yeah, no, that you ain't going to get a weird look from me because it's my favorite.
It's so underrated because a lot of it's the way that's taken care of, stressed out animal and everything, and then poorly taken care of, and then they cook it to where it's this crispy gray looking thing. And then they're like, it's not good to eat. And in reality, like, I think it's the best as long as you take care of it and you know how to cook it and you don't think you have to cook every game steak to where it's dry and crunchy.
Yeah, medium rare for wild game works well,
particularly
with pronghorn. That 130 degree mark is like
just right.
Dialed in.
Yep.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about, you have 2 kids. How old?
I got twin boys. They will be 3 in April.
Okay. Young family.
Yep.
Experiences with them in the field yet?
Oh, yeah. They've been hunting with me since they were 6 months old. I got a really cool picture of their very first hunt. We went up to the Black Hills and got a little whitetail buck. And there's a picture of me holding them both when they're about 6 months.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
They're both like reaching out and trying to touch dad's deer. And,
so spring babies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
And then they've been bear hunting with us. They've been mountain lion hunting, elk, deer, all that. So I'm big on getting them out in the field so they just grow up in the lifestyle.
Yeah. So where does small game hunting fall into the mix for you in hunting priorities? Is that a food source that you supplement as well?
To be honest, now that I have toddlers, it's gotten a lot bigger. I can't think of a better animal to take toddlers hunting than squirrels. They are the perfect animal to take toddlers hunting because they can be as loud as they want. They can stumble around. They can scream and yell.
And they're only helping you.
Yes. And then you shoot the squirrel and then the kids can run over and pick it up. And they're so excited because this is an animal. And it's an animal that's their size that they can carry around while they're hunting. And it's really cool. This was the first fall that I actually was taking the boys squirrel hunting. And the coolest thing about it was watching the boys just mature into it and really start to figure it out. And then it got to be like when we were in elk camp and if they heard a squirrel, they'd start yelling, "Dad," and they'd start pointing to the tree and stuff.
It's like, yeah. Oh, that's cool. All right. So let me ask you this in regards to big game hunting. What do you know now, not growing up in a hunting family or an activity that your family regularly engaged with on an annual basis? What do you know now that you're trying to implement as a mainstay for your young family as you're raising these 2 twin boys?
For me, I want to give I want them to grow up with the full picture of the fact that hunting is something that we need to care for. It's something we need to put a lot of time and effort into building and improving on. We can't really change the mistakes of the past, but we can make a better future with conservation. I'm raising those boys up. I think one of my biggest goals as a parent is to teach them to look at the ecosystem as a whole and look at all the animals within the ecosystem, the foods they rely on, all of it. And it all works together, from all the way from your songbirds clear to your elk, from your mountain lions to your smallest little kestrels, all the predators have a spot within it and all the prey animals have a spot within it and humans have a spot within it as well. And part of our spot within it is the management and the care of it and making sure that we don't repeat mistakes from the past to where we're negatively impacting the future.
Stewardship.
Absolutely.
I would agree. I concur 100%. Specifically to you as an individual, there's nothing like big game hunting. You can kill all the squirrels you want, but big game hunting, does it still get your goat today?
Oh, absolutely.
Favorite animal to hunt? Is there a hunt that you relish in the opportunity and think about all year long and wait for that magical opening day?
Yes and no. Like, I like hunting everything. It all is fun. I'd say as far as big game, it'd be archery hunting for big mule deer in the really high country. I just absolutely love those really early September glassing for red deer.
Yeah,
And
there's something to be said. They're
They
velvet.
got that red, and you're up at 11,000 foot elevation. And it's pretty magical when you get above tree line, and you might not see more than 2 deer that whole day or that whole week, but both those deer are probably huge.
Yeah. Have you had success in those efforts?
Yeah, I've gotten, I had one deer go over 200 inches, but that one I can't even claim good hunting on. I killed that when I was 16, and I just happened to be the lucky person that was in the right place at the right time. Had no idea what I was doing. I'd been perfectly happy shooting a little 3-pointer that came through too. I just happened to be at the right place, right time. Since then, and actually like turning into like where I feel like I'm a decent hunter, I've gotten several 180 plus inch deer. I've got
With your bow?
Yes, bow hunting. I've killed 2 with a compound and 1 with a recurve, and the recurve deer took me, it was a 4-year quest that I wanted to get a mule deer over 180 inches with a recurve bow. And then it was 2019. It was 2018.
2018? Yeah.
2018, I finally got a really nice buck. He ended up going 182 inches, but he was velvet. I got him opening day with a trad bow. And it was really cool because I glassed him up. He was bedded down behind a juniper with another buck of similar size. And then it took me pretty much the rest of the day to stalk into him. And then I had to spend 2 hours, 18 yards from those 2 bedded bucks, just hoping the wind wouldn't change, just waiting for him to get up. And then finally at last light, they got up out of their beds and I got that buck.
Oh, man, what a hunt.
Oh, man, a 4-year
that's a quest
coming together. It was just wow.
So let me ask you this. You've referenced a couple of different sizes, 180, 182 was where that would go. That was the goal you went into it. How much emphasis do you put on the size of the rack for your success?
Honestly, none at all. I use the references of size because that's something that everybody uses to judge the size of an animal. So if you tell somebody 180-inch deer, they look at it and they go, okay, I know.
Yeah.
If you just tell somebody you got a 5-point, it could be like a 3-year-old 5-point or an 8-year-old 5-point.
Yeah.
I honestly don't measure anything beyond just like green score for some animals so I can reference it. But other than that, I don't really care. I think a lot of hunters spend too much time focused on like just inches rather than anything else. And the thing about scoring, we'll say mule deer, since this is muley fanatics, we'll say, you have a big mule deer that will say you have a 170-inch 4-year-old. This buck he's young still. Like he's not in the same caliber as a super mature, like Roman nose, nasty old buck. But he's like antler-wise, he's big, but he's still got more growing to do. And that's something I'd like to see, breeding, like passing on those genetics. I'd honestly rather take a big gnarly 3-pointer that's just got a gross looking rack that, might score 120 inches, but he's got tons of mass and he's just cool. I'd rather take an animal like that because for me, that's a bigger like trophy just because it's a more mature animal. That deer has survived more hunting seasons. Like that deer knows what it's about. He's not young and dumb and just has a really good looking head on him. This is a smart animal. He's evaded predators and everything else and hunters for however long, and then you can finally take him. And then another thing about getting those really big old deer is you're not negatively impacting future generations of deer by killing off a young buck that had good genetics versus let them grow up. Or if it's a big, nasty, ugly rack, take it.
But a big deer is still a big deer.
Big deer is a big deer. I don't care who you are. When you walk up on for me, the feeling's the same, whether it's got the perfect symmetrical rack or it's just a big, gnarly, nasty looking thing. It's still just so cool walking up on a big animal like that.
Heart rate increases, excitement is there. All right, so let me ask you this, because you've had several experiences in the field with success. The thing that you would tell your younger self after the 16-year-old hunt of being in the right place at the right time and just being in that lucky spot, what have you learned? What have you learned that you wished you could have been able to rewind the clock or throw that red flag replay and say, hey, let me go ahead and tell you this now because it's going to make things a lot easier moving forward? Is there a learning experience out there that's sage wisdom to pass on?
Oh, absolutely. Calm down. Stop being in a rush. Sit down and use your glass. You're going to find a lot more deer using your glass than using your boots.
Yeah. I know you have a sponsorship on glass through Maven Outdoors.
Yes.
And Maven's good glass. There's no doubt about it. Is there a particular glass that you use with them?
I really like their B6 binoculars. I've used I'm not going to start name dropping, but I've used some very expensive German glass over the years, and I would put those B6s up against any of them. They're very top quality glass, and realistically, what I always tell people when they're asked what's the best investment to make going into being a hunter, spend the money on the glass. Like, you can get by with a cheaper rifle, you can get by with some of the like just cheaper gear, but like glass is the one thing. Spend the money because you absolutely get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And a good spotting scope is absolutely almost a necessity. Almost. Good binoculars, absolutely a necessity.
Let me ask you on that note, just because of the investment and the decision process that has to go into making that type of investment, how important is that investment that you're making with a company where you know what the company stands for, the availability and the approachability to that company? Because in my mind, that's where Maven shines. Literally, those guys, they solicit the feedback. I'm not saying that others don't, but it just seems to me like that is a company where pick up the phone and you're talking to them. Mm-hmm. Is that a part of the decision process, or is it just the performance of the product?
I definitely would say the performance of the product is first. There's some companies that they have great customer service, but their product just sucks.
Yeah, just call it what it is. I don't care how good your product is.
I want to support them because they're nice people, but at the same time, like, I'm using this for a reason. Like, I'm not just carrying binoculars because I like the way they look around my neck. It's like, I need to get the best results out of this product. So definitely, like, for me, priority is the absolute, like, good glass to begin with. And then from there, absolutely, it goes into customer service, approachability, and all that. I have had issues, like just small little issues over the years with some Maven products, and I can literally just call them and a human being answers the phone.
There's something to be said for that.
And then they're just like, yeah, do you want to mail it to us? And most of the time I'll be traveling through land or two for work anyway. So I usually just drop it off at their office and then they get it right back to me. And sometimes they like upgrade stuff on it and stuff. They're very passionate about their optics and they're very passionate about their customer base. And I think one of the coolest things about just my personal dealings with Maven was I was sitting down with one of the co-founders, Brendan.
Right.
And he was talking about how because they're just direct to the consumer sales, they literally have a list of every single person who's ever purchased a Maven product from them. So that's just really cool. Like, they can literally look up when you bought it and all that versus, I'm not going to name drop, but there's a lot of other name brand optics out there and some of them pretty good optics, but like, they don't know who's bought that. They have zero interaction with it. Like, they make it and then if it breaks, you can call them and they might fix it.
Yeah. No, I think that's valuable, especially as competitive as the industry revolving around hunting has become and the various players that are front and center. There's a lot of options out there. And I'm just curious because there is a lot of good glass out there. There are several good glass companies out there. And so when you start to whittle that down or decipher, okay, where am I going to be? One, I think ambassadors of previous owners or current owners of that inventory, I think that's something to consider. Friends that have that have had success, that can tell good stories about the product in the field, but then also when they have had a problem, whether it was a product fault or a mishap or accident on their fault, the standing behind the product. I think that's important. And again, all direction aside, there's a lot of good glass companies out there. But I think there is a place for Maven that is at the top of the list.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's transition a little bit on your past experiences. What hasn't been filled for Saul? What's the dream hunt? What's the one thing that you hope to accomplish or be able to experience in the world of hunting?
I really like sheep hunting. I really love sheep hunting. Just the physical aspect of it is such a physically demanding hunt. I think it'd be ideal to someday maybe get the slam, but sheep hunting is also very expensive and there's not a whole lot of tags they give out.
Yeah, very limited opportunity.
Yep, very limited opportunity for people that can't afford.
Have you been able to vicariously live through others' experience on hunts where you get to at least tag along for the ride and help?
Yes, through Diamonds the Outdoors, we've done some filming of sheep hunts and stuff, and we're working on a project where we might be filming ewe hunt this upcoming fall for part of a film project about the importance of ewe hunts in certain areas as a means to manage the population, especially when you're dealing with the various diseases that sheep have, especially the ones they get from overlap with domestic sheep. So that's one. 2 years ago, we were up in the Absaroka wilderness area there,
Right.
just off the Yellowstone border. The other guy that runs Diamonds the Outdoors with me, Clinton Blake, he had a sheep tag up there. So we were up there for 3 weeks and got a really nice DIY ram. And it was all backpacking and everything. Everybody else around us was hunting with horses. And they're all like, you guys are stupid.
Yeah, why would you exert yourself to that level? But that's part of the reward, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know. For me, the DIY sheep hunting is it's incredible. Like, you're just relying on yourself. And when you're going into a new area, you don't know this area besides what you've learned from scouting. So I don't know, for me, it's just the essence of hunting. It's not going back to reliable, the old spot you always get them at. You're learning the country, you're learning these certain herds, movements, patterns, and all that. And then you're doing your best to put yourself in the right place to hopefully get a shot off.
All right, final question, Saul, I'd like to ask you, and that goes back to raising 3-year-old toddler twin boys. You talked about the importance of being able to pass along the message of the bigger picture, the ecosystem, the balance within that. But you have twin boys, and that's got to have some challenges just in itself. But physical items, tangible items that are keepsakes that represent dad, what would those, because you don't have one, you have two.
Mm-hmm.
So what would those two items be that you're going to leave these young boys at some point as, this had great value to me, and I hope that it does to you coming from me?
That's a tricky one. There's definitely having two makes it more tricky.
Sure.
Because one item is, like I said, I didn't come from a hunting family, and we didn't really own guns or anything. But a couple years ago, my dad just randomly, completely surprised me. He bought me a Ruger M77 30-06.
Beautiful gun.
Yeah, and so, I have better, more expensive rifles and stuff, but that one was just special because it was from my dad, who my entire life has not been a strong fan of my hunting. So, him going out and buying me a hunting rifle was really cool. And it's something eventually I'm going to pass on to the boys. But it's that, how do you pick which one gets it?
Well, you get the M77 and you get the old buck field knife.
So, realistically, it's funny you just said knives. Just like a hobby of mine is I do like to make knives. And I think once the boys are old enough to actually be carrying their own knives in the field, I think that summer with them, I'm going to make them, with their help, of course, I think I'm going to make them both a hunting knife. And I think that'd be a really cool thing for them to carry with them forever and maybe pass on to their kids as a hunting knife they made with their dad to carry in the field to take care of their game with.
No, I could totally see the value in that. And then, like you said, incorporating them into the process of the build and the final product.
Absolutely. It just makes it more special.
Yeah, I think so. When you can put sweat equity into something, it's just more valuable. Hey, man, it's been great to talk to you about hunting. It's something that certainly needs to be celebrated. It's certainly something that we're both passionate about. We have a role and we have a responsibility as hunters, as conservationists, and I appreciate the work you're doing, working with Sporting Lead Free. I appreciate who you are and what you stand for and what you've stated. We need more of us. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
Saul, anything you'd like to add?
No, I appreciate you bringing me on, and it's been a good conversation.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate that. Saul Griffith, Campfire Chat, sub-show to Wild Things and Wild Places. Please share if you would to help spread the word, and hopefully others will find this content to be worthwhile and valuable. We certainly are enjoying this platform and being able to not only talk about the content in Wild Things and Wild Places, but also the sub-show Campfire Chat and just the celebration of a passion that we hold so dear, no pun intended. Till next time.
And that wraps up another episode of Wild Things and Wild Places. But remember, the journey doesn't end here. Make sure you never miss out by subscribing. Whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, streaming us on our website, or following us on social media, subscribing is the best way to stay connected. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more wild episodes.
Everybody knows I'm a muley fanatic.